Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a story that, honestly, sounds like an ancient myth, but it's entirely heart-wrenchingly true. We're looking at the life of a man named Bahe. His story is set against the ancient sun-baked stones of Mardin, a city in southeastern Turkey. And this isn't just your standard biography. It's a breathtaking look at pure, lifelong devotion that somehow managed to transform an entire region. As we'll see, a single life, lived almost entirely within the confines of one courtyard, echoed out to touch thousands of people. So, the crucial point to anchor ourselves right off the bat is this staggering number 70. That represents the exact amount of years a humble son waited at a monastery door for his mother to return. I mean, take a second to really process that. 70 years of waking up, looking at a gate, and believing today might be the day. It's an unfathomable stretch of time dedicated to a single, fragile promise.
Part 1, A Boy Left Behind. Let's look at the early tragedies of Circus Copton.
So, before he was affectionately known as Uncle Bahe, he was just a vulnerable little boy named Circus, caught in this wave of immense hardship. When he was just a year old, a rooster attacked him, which actually blinded him in one eye. And around that exact same time, his father tragically died of a heart attack. This left his mother, Bajida, a young widow with 4 children. Desperate, she decided to migrate to Syria. But here's the heartbreaking part. She didn't take Bahe. She left the frail 6-year-old boy in the care of the Deir monastery, telling him she would be right back. Now, 4 or 5 years later, she actually did return, but only to tell him, "Pack your suitcase, I will come get you next week." Well, she never did. She started a whole new life and completely forgot about him. And that brings us to this simple, cyclical response that basically became his lifelong mantra. For the next 7 decades, whenever a visitor or a local asked Bahe what he was doing just standing by the gate, he would give this exact reply. He wasn't being poetic. He was stating what, to him, was an absolute fact. Every single time a woman walked through the monastery doors, he'd feel this massive surge of joy, thinking it was his mother, only to have his heart broken all over again when he realized it wasn't her.
Moving on to Part 2, Life at the Monastery. We're going to explore the sanctuary of Deir. This place is just incredibly heavy with history. It literally sits right on top of a before Common Era sun temple. It was actually used as a Roman castle before being transformed into a Syriac monastery way back in the 5th century. It gets its name Zafaran from the saffron plants that grow all around it. It's a place of massive regional significance too, even housing the area's first printing press, which was brought over from England in 1876. So this monumental, historically vital fortress essentially became the protective shell for one abandoned boy. But inside these massive walls, Bahe's personal world was incredibly small. His room had stone walls that were literally 2 meters thick, with just a tiny little hole looking up at the sky. But the most devastating detail? That suitcase. The one his mother told him to pack for next week. It sat right there by the door, permanently packed and untouched, for decades. It's just a heartbreaking monument to his unyielding faith in a broken promise. Now, he didn't just sit in the dark all day. He found purpose. He became the monastery's devoted gardener. He faithfully rang the ancient bells. And in his free time, he'd go up to the terrace and stare out across the vast, endless Mesopotamian plain, looking out towards Syria. He was always searching the horizon for the mother who left him. It really highlights the quiet pathos of a life completely dedicated to service and waiting. Part 3, The Child Who Never Grew Up. Let's talk about his purity in a complex world. We can see a stark contrast here. Physically, Bahe was short, frail, missing an eye, and always wearing his signature hat. And yeah, unfortunately, people sometimes mocked his appearance. But spiritually, the man was an absolute giant. He never lost his innocence. He would play with children even in his old age because internally, he really remained that pure-hearted 6-year-old boy waiting for his mom. He loved everyone equally and befriended literally every single person who walked into that monastery. This is a really vital piece of context. In 2013, director Haydar Demirbaş created a documentary about Bahe's life, and he titled it Misafir, which translates to guest, and it perfectly captured his identity. You see, despite living there for 70 years, Bahe never viewed the monastery as his permanent home. He was always just a guest, basically waiting in the lobby of life for a ride that was never coming. And incredibly, through this documentary, the filmmakers actually tracked down his family in Syria, only to confirm his mother had long passed away, having never once asked about him again. This profound observation on the screen comes from the poet Umit Yashar Ishikhan. To truly capture Baha's essence, Ishikhan actually spent a year and a half empathizing with him, just sitting quietly in that thick-walled room with the tiny window. The result was a staggering 72-page book consisting of a single continuous poem dedicated entirely to Baha's conversation with God, constantly asking where his mother was. This brings us to part 4, a symbol for Mardin and how he transcended boundaries in death. So, zooming out to the macro level, Baha's quiet, patient suffering eventually transformed into this spectacular regional art and a shared cultural memory. Beyond the epic poem and the award-winning documentary we just mentioned, if you walk through the historic tunnel-like passageways of Mardin today, the Abaralar, you'll actually see murals of Baha's face, his sad, hopeful eyes looking right down at you. He completely transformed from a forgotten, abandoned boy into this universal symbol of unwavering hope and absolute loyalty. And then, on a spring morning in 2014, the 76-year-old's heart simply gave out. The suitcase remained packed, but his 70-year wait was finally over. Now, what's really interesting about this is looking at who actually showed up to mourn him. Mardin is this beautiful mosaic of cultures and religions, and let's be honest, often rigid lines are drawn between communities. But at Bahe's funeral, government officials stood shoulder to shoulder with Syriacs, Muslims, Christians, Kurds, Arabs, and Armenians. It's just incredible. His absolute innocence and total lack of malice proved to be a force that completely transcended all societal, religious, and ethnic divides. They all came together to mourn the boy who waited. So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this. We live in a world where it is so incredibly easy to become cynical, to let heartbreak turn us bitter and guarded. Yet here was a man who experienced the ultimate betrayal, abandonment by his own mother, and he responded not with anger, but with 70 years of innocent, unyielding hope, watering the gardens of a monastery for people of all faiths to enjoy. It really makes you wonder, in a world fractured by differences, what does Bahan's incredible resilience teach us about our own capacity for love, forgiveness, and hope?